Hi everybody, I'm Emma, this is Emma Rose and Books. I make videos about reading and about writing. I've got a book called Milk that's being released at the end of the month that I've written, and there'll be stuff in the description bar below and a thing at the end to tell you a bit more about that if you'd like to know. But today's video is about other people's books, so I'm going to do my reading wrap up for September. I thought I'd film in here today. I'm doing the YouTuber thing of filming in my bedroom. Basically it's because the wall is white instead of downstairs where I normally film, where it's yellow, which does bug me when I'm editing it. I don't know, the light in here is a bit weird. Whatever, I don't know. I think I need to get some lights. Anyway, right, the first book that I read this month was Lullaby by Leila Slimani. This was a book club read and it was from the library, so I don't actually physically have a copy, so I'll stick a picture somewhere. And I'd seen this book going around on Instagram a little bit, and so this is a French book and it's been translated into English, obviously. And I felt that the translation made it still read like a French book in terms of the phrasing. It was like, it was almost like it had been a literal translation, you know, so the grammar, I mean the grammar was perfectly fine. It just had that feeling of French writing, in my opinion, which made it kind of feel like it was hard to read, like it just didn't quite scan right. And I think once I read a little bit of it, I became more comfortable with that. And I've read French books before. I've read French books in French. My French isn't that good anymore, but it once was okay enough to be able to read French books. But once I'd kind of fallen into it, it was fine, but I just felt initially that it was just a bit uncomfortable to read. That said, it was a good book. So the premise, I should get a blurb. I'm really professional at this, aren't I? Let's get a blurb up. When Miriam, a French-Moroccan lawyer, decides to return to work after having children, she and her husband look for the perfect caretaker for their two young children. They never dreamed they would find Louise, a quiet, polite and devoted woman who sings to their children, cleans the family's chic apartment in Paris's upscale 10th arrondissement, stays late without complaint and is able to host enviable birthday parties. The couple and nanny became more dependent on each other, but as jealousy, resentment and suspicions increase, Miriam and Paul's idyllic tableau is shattered. The book actually starts out with the scene of one of the children has been killed, and for that reason an awful lot of people that I've spoken to about this book have said that they don't want to read it, that they would be uncomfortable with it. But what I will say is that although that is part of the plot, it's not a significant part of the plot in my opinion, because, well, no, it is a significant part of the plot, but it's not. The book is actually about the way that people act and their interactions and what those mean, you know, the little things, the way people behave, the way they speak to each other, and how that leads to something. It's more about that than it actually is about the incident. It's kind of looking at life and people. That is right up my street in terms of reading. I like things that are about the little nuances, and I love the fact that in no part of the book did it give any kind of explanations really about anything. I like that. I'd rather work things out for myself. I'm not the kind of person that, you know, when you read a thriller and you get like some massive denouement where, you know, the baddie says, well, the reason I did this is because of this, and you get about 4 pages of that and you just think, well, you know, you didn't really need to tell me all of that. I like it when you don't really know and it's not spelled out for you, and you either have to figure it out for yourself or it's left unknown. And I feel like that this book had that quality, that it was just lots of little nuanced things that made you think. And it meant that it lingered for me, which again is something that I like about a book. I was just kind of thinking about, oh, so, you know, why did that person do this thing, or thinking about particular characters and their lives and the unknowns and what would happen to them and where they were going, that kind of thing. And it left it very open. It was just about the mundanities of life. I love that kind of thing. Overall, it was a 4-star book. So the next one that I read this month was Jaws. After reading by Peter Benchley. After reading Meg, which I'll link my review of Meg above, I still haven't seen the film. I just couldn't manage to work it out with childcare and stuff. I want to though. Anyway, after watching Meg, I was in the mood for more kind of shark attack books, basically. And I've had this sitting on my shelf for ages. I have read it before, and so I decided to read it again. And I really, really enjoyed it. It's obviously it's a classic. The blurb. That's not a blurb. That's a what do you call it? A review. There's no blurb. Let's look it up on Amazon. It was just another day in the life of a small Atlantic resort until the terror from the deep came to prey on unwary holidaymakers. The first sign of trouble, a warning of what was to come, took the form of a young woman's body, or what was left of it, washed up on the long white stretch of beach. A summer of terror had begun. Peter Benchley's Jaws first appeared in 1974 and has sold over 20 million copies around the world. Why can't I read? Creating a legend that refuses to die. It's never safe to go back in the water. This book opens with a shark attack, which is just, it kind of grips you of like, whoa, you know, got you right from the start. And what I liked about this is that most of the book is about the character, I can't remember his name, I'm so bad at names, Brody, who's the, like the detective, not detective, police guy, I don't know, what's his job title, I can't remember, police guy, we'll go with that, who is put in charge of dealing with these shark attacks and the decisions he makes about protecting the community. And Amity, where this is set, is a holiday community, so if there's a worries about shark attack, then they're going to lose all the holiday makers, and then that's going to have knock-on effects for, you know, the financial situation of the people who live there. And I liked that subplot running through it. I also liked, again, because it's my kind of thing, the interactions between the characters. There's a big scene where there's a dinner party, and you look at the main character, who's literally already forgotten, Brody, and his wife Ellen, and other characters from the community, and just the little nuances of what they do and what they speak to each other, which is quite cool. And just looking at the impact of an event on people. So I liked that about it. I mean, as I say, it's a classic, everybody knows it. I love the ending of this book. I mean, this is like the sensible version of Meg, because it's actually believable, just not as stupid and well written. The only real criticism I could have is I did not like the way that black characters were talked about in this book. There are references to a series of rapes that that Brody has dealt with, and it's always talked about how it was a black person that did that. And there are other references to black people within the community that I felt were always not out and out like racist maybe, but just sort of disparaging. So I still gave it 4 stars because overall I love the story and I found it very interesting. I enjoyed reading it. I would have given it more. I just felt I was let down by that. I'd be interested to know what other people think about that actually. On to the next one. Call the Midwife by Jennifer Worth. This book has been out a little while, I think, and obviously the series has been on for ages. I don't actually know if I'm up to date with the series. I feel like maybe I haven't watched the most recent one, published in 2002. This is a big deal in the UK. I don't know about anywhere else. I think it's fairly popular in the US, but because the series is so popular on TV, and I love the series. I always find that it, you know, makes you laugh, makes you cry. You know, and obviously it's about parenting, birth, all that stuff, which I love. You know, I've written a book about breastfeeding and my experiences, so this is right up my street in that respect. I don't know why I haven't picked it up before, but I saw it in a charity shop and thought, oh, I haven't actually read that. I loved this book. I read it in a day because it was just, I could not put it down. I was desperate to know what happened next. So the blurb is, life in London's Docklands in the 1950s was tough. The brothels of Cable Street, the Cray brothers and gang warfare, the meth drinkers in the bomb sites. This was the world that Jennifer Worth entered when she became a midwife at the age of 22. Babies were born in slum conditions, often with no running water. Jennifer Worth describes the romance and beauty of the great port of London, the bug-infested tenements, the spectre of disease, the sense of community and the incredible resilience of women who bore more than 10 children. Funny, disturbing and moving, Call the Midwife brings to life a world that has now changed beyond measure. That blurb is spot on. That's exactly what the book is like. So each chapter basically documents another incident within this community. So another birth or another, you know, another story, but they're all connected. Oh, I love this. I mean, the characters are beautiful. Let me explain a little bit. So my family background, my dad is a Londoner, and he would say he's a Cockney, but he's actually from the West End, so technically he's not, but he speaks like a Cockney. He was not in this kind of poverty, but he talks about his youth of playing on the bomb sites and the you know, the kind of characters of what London was like then that are familiar to me from the way that my dad spoke. On the other side of my family, my mum is Irish descent, but her Irish parents moved to London and lived in extreme poverty. I don't know whether to this extent, but you know, I know they were very, very poor and living in a small apartment. And so to me, reading this, I know that stories within my family bear some resemblance to this, and so it had a very nostalgic feel to me, and it makes you kind of think, oh, I wonder if that is what people experience within my family. Did my family see that? Did they, you know? So that was interesting, and it meant that I felt a real tie to the book. Also, there's a section at the end where they go through how to speak Cockney, basically, because the book is written in is written phonetically. And so I really enjoyed that, because I'd enjoyed reading the Cockney stuff anyway, and this is how my dad talks. And I sat trying to say the sentences, like, my Cockney is not that good. Let's have a look, find a good example. Like, here's an example with glottal stops. He didn't ought to have it. I can't say it. Slow down. He didn't ought to have hit it. He didn't ought to have hit it. And it's got a bit in it about Cockney rhyming slang, which made me laugh, because generally I know a lot of Cockney rhyming slang and was brought up with it around me. But one that I didn't know that was in here was rabbit, which is a common word to use, say, oh, someone was rabbiting on. And I didn't know that that came from Cockney rhyming slang, which is rabbit and pork for talk. But I mean, I grew up with hats were known as tit-fors because it's a tit for tat. You know, Cockney is part of my lexicon. So, you know, it was fun to read it. So that was really good. I gave this book 5 stars. I was totally absorbed. There were some of the stories were, oh my god, they were so beautiful. I loved the story of Conchita in it. That's just stunning. If I was to criticise it, I would say that in some parts I feel like it romanticises that time period and that level of poverty. Finally, I read Evelyns Number. I did a more in-depth review about this. Let's do a blurb for that, because I've done all the others. Fans of The Hunger Games and Divergent will love Evelyns Number and its incredible dystopian take by Amazon best-selling author Bethany. I have problems with her name. I should look it up. Everyone in Eden is assigned a number tattooed on their neck, which determines their value and place in the world. On her numbering day, Evalene Vandereth anticipates joining the elite. Born in an upper-class family, she knows exactly who she is and what she's worth. Even as the needle breaks her skin, she is blissfully happy. She never considers another outcome until it's too late. Now 18-year-old Evalene lives in fear, struggling with her new identity, stripped of her freedom and basic human rights. Can she escape her number? Is anyone else asking the same question? To me, this book, it's a YA dystopian book, and it was good, and it was a very interesting idea. And the way I viewed this is that this would be a good introduction into dystopian novels. If you're reading YA, you know, somebody, say a teenager who's reading for the first time a dystopian novel, I think this would be a great one to start with, because it wasn't too heavy, and it raised very interesting ideas. It has a sub-theme of talking about religion and faith that I think was handled really nicely. It's not over. I know that Bethany is a Christian and that's why she's talked about it, but it's handled really, really well, and it's just talking about the idea of faith and people who act on, you know, the will of God, and is that the will of God, and it was really well dealt with. I know that Bethany has a sequel coming out soon, so that's very exciting. And yeah, it was good. I give it 4 stars. So that's everything that I read in September. Let me know if you've read any of those books and what you thought of them. You know, it's all opinion after all. You know, other people are going to think different things about these books than I do. And please like if you did. Please subscribe for more videos about what I'm reading and what I'm writing. And I'll see you all for my next one. Bye! It's really hard to do a thumbnail when I don't actually have most of the books that I read.